Where can the horizon lie when a nation hides its organic mines in a cellar, dark and grim? They must be very dim.
Stand by for action!
Indian Air Force shoots down UFO.
Thank you for joining us again, and welcome to episode 6 of the Pierrots and Fools show with me, Mark Cocking, and Richard A. Wright. I hope all is good and that a light is shining through for you in these monumental times. So much has been going on. There's even a new series of X-Files to get everybody's knickers in a twist as they try to reframe what they've been saying publicly before about UFOs to tally just a bit better with the U-turn that the series has dealt to them. We even see Scully proclaiming repeatedly, "I want to believe." More later from Richie on the Indian UFO shoot-down, and a whole lot more. I must say that in pondering, investigating, researching and living the state of the world and the deepest knowledge retained behind the veils by those who run our world, and who influence every aspect of our lives, I became convinced and remain convinced that I, you, and everybody actually chose to incarnate in these times. This understanding isn't contrary to my other realizations that I've talked about concerning the falsity of religions and their jealous and violent gods. Indeed, their religions are just perverted echoes of the original understanding, and the echoes they reverberate aren't unique to them. They merely hijack them. These echoes of a unified understanding of the universal reality and our conscious place in it can be seen, heard and felt throughout the natural world and within our own personal inner worlds too. In last week's episode I majored on what for some is a boring and complicated subject, mathematics, and its related subject, magic, in an attempt to explore the question rather than the answers. And we ascertained that the question is, insofar as mathematics is able to provide an accurate model and description of all aspects of our three-dimensional, five-sense reality, as it does this mean that mathematics itself is tangibly rooted as a real and actual thing within reality? Or have we merely invented mathematics ourselves and are therefore seeing patterns and relationships which don't themselves have any tangible reality at all? So, did we invent mathematics or did we discover it? And whereas I've made it clear that I believe it is a tangible part of reality, which we have merely rediscovered, my opinion has no value in the debate, and I'd suggest neither does yours, on the basis that it can only be one or the other, so it's a straight 50-50. You will find, if you did a survey, that about half the people would rationalise one perspective and the other half the opposite, assuming that they understand the question itself. And that's what I tried to do last week. Tonight I'll be talking in a bit more detail about the solution to this conundrum, one which unifies mathematics and all the sciences into one understanding, into one model, if you like. All previous mathematical models of reality have been just that, models constructed by mathematicians or theoretical physicists to explain the mechanisms of the natural world. There are thousands of them, and however successful some of them have been at unlocking the science of the universe, they remain legion and aren't unified as one. You probably know that the science of the large-scale universe and that of the small scale in modern science are mutually exclusive. They contradict each other, and they're not, therefore, applicable to the whole of reality, only their particular scale or size within it. This is why mainstream physics looks for a grand unified theory, because it's aware of its own internal contradictions. But the prime number cross isn't the invention of man, and as I talk about it in this show, try to keep in mind that this particular model, rediscovered by a chemist and mathematician called Peter Plichter, who I often wonder if he picked a peck of pickled protons, is not the invention of any mathematician or model maker. It's there to be seen and rationalized by all, and the more you pursue it, the more you realize that its claim to unify all understanding in a simple and beautiful way is more profoundly true than even that awesome claim would suggest. But that is a trip for the individual. And, as I keep saying, it wouldn't be possible to present a full explanation of the prime number cross, even if such a thing were possible anyway. On a radio podcast, certainly, without visual aids. So I'm not going to get caught up in the numbers or anything technical. Actually, the beauty of the prime number cross is that there is nothing more technical about it than the arithmetic you learned at school, maybe as a 14 or 15-year-old. No doubt, like I did, many will have forgotten this, but my point is that if you're turned off by arithmetic, but do want to understand the prime number cross, the biggest hurdle you have to cross would be to revise that basic stuff, addition and subtraction and multiplication, and not to lose sight of the simple reality that multiplication is just addition. You might not be able to multiply 6 by 9, but you could add 9 sixes up. It's the same thing. Sorry to sound patronizing, it's just I do find that some of these issues crop up regularly with people, but they're simple steps to get over. And remember that these are numbers, the prime numbers, which are divisible by 1 or itself only. 7 and 13 would be examples. 4 isn't. Therefore, primes will be odd numbers because if they were divisible by 2, they couldn't be prime numbers. Prime number, of course, meaning first number. These are the building blocks of all the other numbers. All numbers are created from them. And, well, 1 or 2 other interactions, but that's another story. But ponder that 2 is a prime because it is divisible only by 1 and by itself. So 2 is, therefore, strangely and significantly, the only even prime number. And 2 is, of course, the number of choice, on or off, up or down, for example. It's also the number of balance, or of doubling, or halving. You can probably easily work out the simple prime numbers for yourself to see that they are prime. But how would you know if, say, the number 5,387,956 is a prime or not? Well, don't worry, we're not going there, but I hope you realize that this would be a very long calculation to work out. It would take time, and lots of it. And this is why computers and high-security coding mechanisms use prime number encoding systems. It takes time to work out and can't therefore be broken quickly enough before the computer locks the intruder out. Nuclear missile security codes are based on prime number encryption. So consider the implications if suddenly it was possible to crack prime number encryption quickly. The world would have no security, merely the illusion of it. Well, welcome to the prime number cross. But more on this later. I also want to talk about Islam, and once again about money and the asking of the question. But meanwhile, I'd like to sing you a song. It's 9 minutes long, but I hope it won't seem it if you listen to the words. It's called Signet Committee, and it alludes to the failure and the sellout of the hippie movement and the realities of protest and politics. But more to the point, the words are so incredibly relevant to today's reality as history repeats itself in our own lifetime. I'll be talking much more about the literal establishment of a Signet Committee as well, to go and ask the ultimate question of our government and our hidden leadership in full public view. But for now, this is Signet Committee, penned by a 21-year-old David Bowie in 1968, soon after he changed his name from Davy Jones I bless you madly, sadly as I tie my shoes. I love you badly, just in time at times I guess. Because of you I need to rest, because it's you that set the test. So much has gone, and little is new. And as the sparrow sings, dawn chorus for someone else to hear. The thinker sits alone, growing I gave them life, I gave them all. They drained my very soul dry. I crushed my heart to ease their pains. No thought for me remains there. Nothing can they spare. What of me? Who praise their efforts to be free? Words of strength and care and sympathy. I opened doors that would have blocked their way. I braved their cause to guide for a little pay. I ravaged at my finance just for those whose claims were steeped in peace, tranquility. Those who said new world, new ways ever free. Those whose promises stretched in hope and grace for me. Oh. Bless you madly, sadly as I tie my shoes. I love you badly, just in time at times I guess. Because of you I need to rest. Oh yeah. Because it's you that set the test. So much has gone, and little is new. And as the sunrise stream flickers on me, my friends talk of glory and told dreams where all is God. But God is just a word. Well, we had a friend, a talking man, who spoke of many powers he had. Not of the best of men, but ours. We used him, we let him use his powers. We let him fill our needs, now we are strong. But the road is coming to its end. Now the damned have no time to make amends. No purse of token fortune stands in our way.
the silent guns of love will blast the sky. We broke the ruptured structures built of age. Our weapons were the tongues of crying rage. Where money stood, we planted seeds of rebirth and stabbed the backs of fathers, sons of dirt. Infiltrated business cesspools, hating through our sleeve. Yeah, we slit the Catholic throat, stoned the poor on slogans such as wish you could hear. Love is all we need. Kick out the jams, kick out your mother, cut up your friend, screw up your brother, or he'll get you in the end. And we know the flag of love is from above, and we can force you to be free, and we can force you to believe. And I close my eyes and tighten up my brain, for I once read a book in which the lovers were slaves. Knew not the words of the Free State's refrain. It said, I believe in the power of good, I believe in the state of love, I will fight for the right to be right, I will kill for the good of the fight for the right to be right. And I open my eyes to look around, and I see a child laid slain on the ground. As a love machine lumbers through desolation rows, plowing down man, woman, listening to its command, but not hearing anymore. No, not hearing anymore. Just the shrieks from the old rich, and I want to believe in the madness that calls now, and I want to believe that a light's shining through somehow. I want to believe, I want to believe, and we want to believe, and we want to live, oh, we want to live, 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 I 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 want to live.
Oh, how I want to believe. Now, I've received a complaint. In a recent episode, we called for a recruitment campaign along the lines of MI6's recruitment of mothers for domestic spying purposes. And we considered this fresh input of young ladies can only be a good thing, and agreed that some young 30-somethings would add a new dynamic to the truth movements. Richie is tired of looking for a good woman who actually understands what he's into without finding it strange. We probably all know that feeling at some level. His subjects are UFOs and planetary sciences, and he thinks that the intelligent single women in our UK truth and research communities have been hunted to extinction. Combine this with the basic requirements of must have a good sense of humour, must be able to cook, and must not believe that the earth is flat, and you see the statistical issue. So, anyway, we thank the security services for their kind gesture and their timely restocking of the honey trap larder, if you like, and have submitted a request that they be trained in Eastern cookery. Oh, and pies, good pies. And if they could bring their own crepe pan, that would get us talking. So we called a recruitment campaign and asked for female applicants over the age of 21 and of all nationalities, religions and persuasions who are willing to entertain, for example, Freemasons, politicians, journalists and judges, with a view to becoming their controllers on behalf of the People's Signet Committee. We felt that this was a fair and balanced approach to those who do the same to us. But this has caused an outrage, and an accusation was made that we're being sexist. The complainant was a judge, and he feels it's unfair and downright discriminatory against him and his peers if operatives were restricted to females, demanding that the age be lowered to 5 and that boys be admitted too. Apparently, since Jimmy Savile died, there's only about a dozen grooming networks left, and they're struggling to deal with the supply logistics because of the cost increases brought about by the new living wage. So I've suggested that he and his cronies have a mass debate on the issue and consider using retired politicians as their receivers instead. Meanwhile, the winner of the Pierrots and Fools lighter from the last show was one Anthony Blair from London, who supplied only a P.O. Box address. Now, I'm sure it must be a common name, but if that is you, Tony, I've enclosed a tin of lighter fuel, because the postal regulations demand that the lighter floss is dry. But please, after priming your new lighter, do empty the rest of it over your head, and then ignite whilst chanting, "In the villa of Ormond stands a solitary candle." These lighters, though, are seriously top notch, so if you do get the chance to throw it outside of the immediate combustion zone, please do, because it'll be worth a bloody fortune on eBay afterwards. And one last bit of housekeeping before moving on. One of those had to be there moments. Unfortunately for me, I was. A man was telling me that I don't understand anything because the earth is flat and I must be stupid for believing it's a sphere. This keeps happening to me. After a couple of minutes of bantering to clarify that, yes, indeed, he was serious in his belief, and establishing that he'd been researching it for weeks on the internet, so it must be true. But beyond that, he has thought about it too, and apparently used his own mind and intelligence to come to his own conclusions. Good on him. Then he came up with that classic flat-brainer question, though, sensing his victory because he knew I couldn't answer it satisfactorily. And that question was, can you prove that the earth is round? That's a bit like asking someone to prove that there is or isn't a God. So the question is just being a pedantic twat, really. I told him that obviously he was aware that the math which defines the area of a circle, that of the flat earth scenario, is the same as that which is used to prove that it's a sphere also. And he confirmed that he knew this was the case. What this means simply is that if you can imagine a circle, let's say a vanity mirror, hinged on two sides so that it can spin head over toe to reveal the magnifying shaving mirror on the other side. Now the math which defines that circle, the surface of the mirror, the flat earth, is simply spun on those hinges one full revolution to transcribe a sphere. Do you see? Same math, but spun in a third dimension. So it can be used to prove either case, mathematically only. Once he'd confirmed he knew all of this, I asked him what the formula for the area of a circle was. But not only could he not remember, but he didn't actually damn well know it. He had some vague memory of pi from his school days, but he believed this didn't matter, even though his whole argument was based upon using that simple math to prove that it doesn't prove that the earth is a sphere, so it must be flat. Well, I politely suggested that his kind bring discredit to the movements that they attach themselves to. a bit like a dog turd on a shoe. And that day will come when they should be actively shunned by all serious truth seekers, spiritual, temporal, or otherwise. They do us all and themselves a disservice with their unhinged ego, masquerading as knowledgeable. I say this to incite them to attack, because that's when they're at their funniest, seriously, always reverting to their own ignorance to prove their case. It's amazing, and it can be fun, without ever being too distracted from the important things, which I'll mention later. I do think this movement should look forward to a summer of flat earth baiting. We could even have open-air parties if you think about it. Distribute maps of the locations and the venues so everyone can attend. And don't worry about the flat earther turning up to disrupt things, because remember, we'll distribute maps of locations. That fucks them up big time. Any who do work it out successfully, though, and don't end up in Mongolia, will be so few that we can deal with them, I'm sure. Sat-nav, I hear you say. Well, they don't use them. They think there's a demon running around the edge of the earth beaming out coordinates, so they'll necessarily avoid using it. Sorted.
Stand by for action. We are about to launch.
Richie.
Richie.
All right. Yeah, this is a story that was on January the 26th, on the 67th Republic Day in India. The IAF, the Indian Air Force, they scrambled a Su-30 fighter jet to shoot down, intercept this thing, and it showed up on a radar. So obviously it was a big thing if it was showing up on radar, and it was described as a weather balloon. Now, they use weather balloon as an excuse for everything, don't they? If you cast your mind back to Roswell in 1947, they said there were Project Mogul, and it was dropping dummies from high altitude weather balloons, which for whatever reason, I mean, that's just crazy. So it's a weather balloon, it's a weather balloon, it's a weather balloon. That's the official stance on everything. So they scrambled a fighter jet, and around 10:30 to 11 a.m., and the jet shot the object down over Guji, which is in the Barma district. The defense spokesman, the Lieutenant Colonel in charge, Manish Ojha, says the police and military officials sent to Guji to investigate. The debris is being investigated to determine its nature. And that's an interesting one there from the Lieutenant Colonel, isn't it? Now, the police investigator, a guy called Jasram Bose, he's the police investigator in charge, and he's actually confirmed some objects, which are 5 triangular or cone-shaped objects that came off the explosion when this thing went down. Now, the villagers around the district, they said there was 5 massive explosions. Some of them even said it caused cracks in the houses. There was such big explosions. Now, if this thing's a weather balloon, why is it creating such big explosions? If you hit IAF shoots down UFO into YouTube, you can see the original news footage, and you can see these triangular objects, and they are triangular cone shaped, but it's impossible to say what these are. I wouldn't like to say that they're alien.
Do they look like fragments of something, or are they actually cone-shaped objects? I haven't looked.
They are cone-shaped objects, but they're rather small. I mean, you can fit 3 of them in the palm of your hand quite easily, so you can hold 3 of them. So they're kind of nuts and bolts sized kind of objects. It's kind of maybe 2 or 3 inches long.
These sound like the Omphalos stone, the original. They're cone-shaped objects about that size, are they?
Yeah.
I'll have a look at that afterwards. Yeah. Sorry, man.
But there was an impact crater, and there's a guy called Manohar Singh. He's a resident. He quotes, "The blasts were heard 5 times, and we saw some objects falling from the sky after an aircraft flew by. My house has developed cracks." Now, like I said before, if this is a weather balloon, why is it exploding with such ferocity that it's actually causing cracks in people's houses?
Mm-hmm.
Now,
it's not feasible.
I've followed up the story as much as I can, and there's no official or unofficial explanations. People are drawing kind of their own conclusions in some forums, but that's about it. There's been no official bullplop come out as yet, but I think they're going to stick to the weather balloon thing. One of the theories was it was sent in from Pakistan and it had a bomb on it. That was one explanation, which is as feasible as the next explanation, I guess.
You'd have seen a massive mobilisation if that were true.
Yeah, well, some people were saying it was a kind of propaganda exercise or a training exercise on Republic Day, on the 67th Republic Day. So everyone was mobilised anyway, so everyone was on edge.
Yeah,
interesting. But I see it from the army side, it was a balloon, but if it was a balloon, why is it exploding with such ferocity?
Well, they're going to have to come out with these materials in public now, aren't they? So this isn't 1947 anymore. Surely they're going to have to say, right, this is what the objects are. We can't identify it or whatever. I
can't help but feel they passed these objects to the IAF, which is the Indian Air Force, for analysis, which, if there's anything unearthly about them, they'll have been taken over by the Americans by now. The Americans always take over in ufological issues, always, without question. So we're never going to get the truth about it.
That's true even on British bases, isn't
Yes,
it?
absolutely. Yeah. And it's... The official explanation is going to be that of a prosaic explanation, and I think they're going to stick to the weather balloon story, and I also think that they're going to maybe throw in a little propaganda with Pakistan as well. But from what I gathered, and I seen a video, and it was a Pakistani denial, but there was no subtitles on it, and unfortunately I don't speak the lingo, so I couldn't make out what I was saying. But from the title of the video, what I got was it was a Pakistani denial of this thing that they planted a bomb on a weather balloon. I'm sure both countries have nuclear weapons. Yeah. So I don't know why they'd be sending
an intercontinental ballistic balloon.
Yeah, you can just see it now, can't you? Will it get there quickly? It'll take several weeks to get there, Commander. Send it now. It'll be there next Christmas, if it gets there at all. The witnesses in the village, this is some quotes from them. Soon after the UFO was shot down, 5 deafening explosions were heard over Guji, spreading panic in local communities. There was no human casualties, well, luckily. Thank God for that. What's interesting about it is police have confirmed that it's not the first time that massive blasts are heard in the area. Earlier in January, residents in nearby Sinli Jacquer report debris falling from the UFO after a loud and mysterious blast is heard over the village. Villagers collected sample and stupidly sent them to the authorities for investigation. So it's exploded. They went, wow, look at all this stuff. And yeah, I'll have this, when really what they should have been doing is send it to independent investigators for analysis and for it to be scrutinised. Now, like I said before, anything like that, it's gone. You're never going to see that again. It's in an Indiana Jones style warehouse, locked in a box somewhere, which is heavily guarded, and you're never going to find it, and you're never going to get to.
Too bloody right, yeah.
Right, now, was it a training exercise? I don't know about that. It all seems a bit too harsh for a training exercise. I'm not going with training exercise. I'm sitting on the wall with it for now. What's interesting about it is the 5 mysterious explosions. That's what the curiosity thing.
That gives you the Yeah.
I think they're going to come out with a prosaic explanation from it. We're going to hear no more official about it, and it's going to be thrown into the realms of conspiracy history, unfortunately. But like I say, I always keep an open mind, and I really hope we do get the truth about whatever it was, because these things happen all the time. There's a kind of caveat to that story. If you look at social media, it's probably popped up in your news feed, particularly if you're a member of UFO groups and stuff, about these metal balls falling from the sky all over the earth. Now, these things are coming crashing to earth. I've seen some of the impact craters, and I don't think they fell from that far. I think if these things have fell from space, you're going to see a lot bigger of impact crater. These things look like they do look like they fell from height, but from space, I don't know about that. And yeah, these things have fell in Spain, Turkey, Vietnam. Now, I remember reading one about one fell in Kingston-upon-Thames as well. Mm-hmm. But this was more cylindrical thing, I think. But again, no massive impact crater, which you'd expect if something fell from space. A huge impact crater. Mm-hmm. You just don't see that. But what's mysterious about it is there's no explanation for these things. Now, even if they fell from the height of satellites, you'd see a lot bigger craters. So what on earth's dropping metal balls around the world?
Well, there has to be a punchline there.
Answers on a postcard.
If I can think of one, bet your arse I'll edit it in straight away. Well, again, where's the analysis for these things? Who's saying, yes, these are metal and they're made out of such and such?
Oh, they're definitely there. These things are definitely happening. And I think the one in Spain, which was the first one to happen, when I seen the pictures, they had the guys in radiation suits around it and everything. So these things are definitely there. But again, if they've been taken away for analysis, I haven't heard anything about the analysis of these objects.
That's the trouble. All these stories just disappear under a veil, and you never find out, do we?
Well, that's what I mean. Now, we might find out, but because so many people cast aspersions on independent investigators who do good work because they're not on the BBC or they're not on ITV or they're not on any kind of Channel 5 documentaries or whatever. The truth probably is out there. It's just most people won't believe it until they see it.
Well, of course, there's the
News at 10, Trevor MacDonald. Aliens are here. You know, it's just not, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen.
Oh, you got to use that one.
That's the end, isn't it?
Do you want a glass of water?
Yeah, please.
He's under pressure.
I don't feel under pressure. I just feel like I've got a tickly throat.
Oh, is that all it is?
Yeah.
Freedom! Just throw your hands in the air and wave them like you just don't care. Tune in to Cry Freedom Radio Show with Lisa on the air. Freedom!
Day after day, they send my friends away to mansions cold and grey, to the far side of town, where the thin men stalk the streets, while the saints stay underground. Day after day, they tell me I can go. They tell me I could blow to the far side of town, where it's pointless to be high, 'cause it's such a long way down. So I tell them that I can fly, I will scream, I will bring my arm, I will do me harm. Here I stand, foot in hand, talking to my wall. I'm not Don't set me free. I'm as heavy as can be. Just my livery on my knee, and my EST made me free. 'Cause I'd rather stay here with all the madmen than perish with the sad men roaming free. And I'd rather play here with all the madmen, for I'm quite content them all the same as me. Where can the horizon lie when a nation hides its organic mind in a cellar dark and grim? They must be very dim. Day after day, they take some rain away, then turn my face around to the far side of town. Then ask me how I feel, then tell me that it's real. Here I stand, foot in hand, talking to my wall. I'm not quite right at all, am I? Don't set me free. I'm as helpless as can be. My libido split on me. Give me some good old lobotomy. 'Cause I'd rather stay here with all the madmen than perish with the sad men roaming free. And I'd rather play here with all the madmen, for I'm quite content they're all the same as me. Same, same, same. Oppression. Same, same, same. Oppression. Same, same, same. Oppression. Same, same, same. Oppression. Thank you very much.
All the Madmen by Holy Holy, with Glenn Gregory, Tony Visconti, Lisa Ronson, Woody Woodmansey and others. Anyway, in previous shows, I've spent a lot of time highlighting the fictional basis of the Abrahamic religions and said a lot about Christianity and Judaism. It might be because, at least when you criticise them, generally the worst you get is a face full of threats about damnation and how you'll see that they are right and that you'll burn in hell for eternity and type stuff. To criticise Islam, however, seems to be a bit of a no-no in this day and age, which I find amazing because, in my opinion, it's not only as corrupt and made up as the others, but is possibly even far more so, being a later tag-on religion, sucking off the other two. And I say, in my opinion, but my opinion's just an observable reality. The only people who don't see it either haven't looked or have been indoctrinated by its violent neuro-linguistic programming. An example of that would be perhaps the way that they're all trained to say, "Peace be upon him," every time the Prophet's name is mentioned, possibly on pain of stoning even. It's not hard to see how simple mind control techniques, such as these, now well understood, lead to a situation where followers are reluctant to question anything. It's like the Hotel California. A Muslim can check in but never leave. Apostates are treated terribly and even murdered. The Quran demands it. I've found in my conversations with the Islamic community and their apostates that they are seriously short on the facts and realities, claiming things for Islam which simply don't stand up to scrutiny. They may believe that they're peaceful and loving, they may be, but their religion isn't, just like the other Abrahamic perversities. But these good folk can no longer sit back and separate themselves from what others do in the name of their religion. This isn't just a casual observation. If it were, there wouldn't be a multitude of organisations and creepy NGOs and charities apparently working to bring that message home within the Muslim communities. This is happening because they, like their Abrahamic counterparts, don't express themselves against the insane jihadist types. Some notable and noble exceptions do exist, of course. Ironically, very recently, one Islamic woman went viral on YouTube for stating the realities quite clearly. But while the moral, liberal, middle quagmire of society meanders around its own excuses and reasonings, they permit a wicked and evil tribal system of sexist Sharia law and punishment to dislodge the foundations of our own moral and legal systems. These systems do need shaking up. This is what I talk about, and no doubt a lot of you are into, because they're rotten to the core. But they're ours to shake up and change. It won't be long, I assure you, before this insidious system has so infiltrated all aspects of our British society and politics that those of us who protest or engage in activism against the corrupt state will be getting our hands cut off and our shoes left outside. If one were to claim that the Arab world was technologically and mentally still in the Stone Age, they'd be called racist or ignorant of the facts. Yet, provably, the Arab world produces only 7,000, roughly, peer-reviewed scientific papers each year, about the same as a small European country, say, like Sweden. Rates of invention and patent registration in the Muslim world are utterly minimal. This is a direct consequence of being a people of one book. I don't intend to go into endless details quoting this or that to prove that the religion itself, from the Quran to the Hadiths, the 5 pillars of Islam. Notice always pillars in these religions are evil, because, of course, they themselves are not evil. The problem is that they create the evil. Look around you. You may believe that because ISIS is funded by Western or Jewish intelligence services, that it's all made up. But this patently overlooks the fanaticism embedded within the religion and the people who make up that organization. They've done more to smash historical artifacts, not because the CIA wants to cover up alien visitation in the past, but because these mindless idiots truly believe that they're doing their mad God's work by destroying anything at all which doesn't validate their own belief of history. But unfortunately for all of us, that means everything is to be destroyed, because their own belief is as wrong as the other Abrahamic morons. Are we to feel sorry that some moderate Muslims feel embarrassed that others are doing awful things in their names? Or should we demand that they rise up against this sickness in their communities? It's raging. within the Muslim communities in the UK already, and some of these have literally become no-go areas even to the police, with their own Sharia law, criminal gangs, child grooming and rape gangs, all of which is actually applauded by the Quran. Just go and look for yourself. When people like Tommy Robinson say, stand up to highlight the realities, well, we all know what happens. I do recommend you read his recent book, Enemy of the State by Tommy Robinson, and make your own mind up about who the racists in this country are and who is funding and supporting them. He does, after all, prove every point he raises within his book because it's all on the official record. It's just that you probably weren't aware of the real story. Everyone in the UK should make themselves aware of it. Oh, and do realise that Islam has always said that the earth is flat, so it must be true. Islam claims to be the fastest growing religion in the world, but that stands up to no scrutiny. As many leave it as join it. But this in itself is a dangerous thing if you think about it, because ultimately this leads to a hardcore militant mainstream, all the good folk with minds of their own actually having left. Let me, for a few minutes, look at some of the bigger claims or some of the insights into Islam. Of course, the biggest miracle that they claim for the Quran is that Muhammad was actually able to write it in the first place because he was illiterate. And of course, this is a miracle to them, which proves the divinity of the contents of the Quran. So it begs the question, was this guy illiterate? Now, Muslim tradition that states that he was a successful merchant before embarking on his prophetic career. Trading activity throughout the Roman Empire would almost certainly have required him to learn the Roman numerals, as these were used to represent the numbers before the popularization of Arabic numerals. It would have taken a peculiarly incurious mind to not move beyond these letters and to learn the rest of the letters of the alphabet. The very first words of the Quran, as found in Quran 96:1, are a command to recite or read. So it would be very strange if Muhammad ignored this foundational command and simply continued on his illiterate way. The word ummi, traditionally seen by Muslims as testifying to Muhammad's illiteracy, can be translated in a variety of other ways. It can, for example, be rendered as Gentile, indicating that Muhammad didn't even come from the numbers of the people of the book that he talks about. The Quran implores Muslims to be diligent in seeking wisdom. It also contains many prayers for an increase of knowledge. Quran 20:114, for example. Increasing in knowledge is something that is very difficult to do if you're illiterate. So, are we supposed to understand that Allah's Prophet was at least partially disobedient by not becoming literate to this foundational command? There are clear references in the Quran to reading and writing activity by Muhammad himself. For example, in the verse in which he is accused of copying tales of the ancients. Reference is made to Muhammad writing and dictating words. So, it can be stated quite clearly that the question of Muhammad's supposed illiteracy proves nothing about the divine origins of the Quran, and it's quite possible, in fact, to prove that he was literate. There are so many other contradictions in the Quran. Let's look at the ones about creation. One of the acid tests that the Quran sets for itself is that it is without contradiction or discrepancy. It says, "Do they not consider the Quran with care? Had it been from other than Allah, they would surely have found therein much discrepancy. Therefore, if Muslims call us to Islam, one of their main tasks should be to show us that there are no contradictions in the Quran. This would be a very tall order, to say the least, as there are many statements that flatly contradict statements in other parts of the book." Muslims solve some of these difficulties by pointing to what they call the law of abrogation, the naskh, which states that a later revelation supersedes an earlier one. In other words, as the circumstances of the earliest Muslims changed, Allah's revelations kept pace with these changes. Only a very small percentage of contradictions can be explained away by using this theological device, though. As you'll see, some of the contradictions have to do with creation or with the central theological truths. The law of abrogation surely can't be applied in these instances, can it? Otherwise, we'd have to assume that Allah changed his nature or retroactively changed the way in which he created while the Quran was being revealed. So, let's look at some of those contradictions. Which was created first, heaven or earth? Well, in Quran 79:27, it's clearly stated that heaven was created first, followed by the creation of the earth. It says, "Are you a more difficult creation, or is the heaven? Allah constructed it. He raised its ceiling and proportioned it, and he darkened its night and extracted its brightness, and after that he spread the earth." This is contradicted by at least two other passages in the Quran, which the order of creation is actually reversed. One is Quran 2:29. It says, "He it is who created for you all that is in the earth. Then turned he to the heaven and fashioned it as 7 heavens. And he is knower of all things." So this clearly is a glaring contradiction. And Muslims attempt to resolve this by claiming that the spreading described in the Quran simply refers to an ordering of creation instead of the actual act of creation. Right. This has to be unwarranted. Firstly, there is nothing at all in that passage that would cause anyone to read the text in that way. And the only reason that they go for such a strange interpretation is to resolve this troubling contradiction. Secondly, it is the case that the Arabic word madad, which translated means spread, is used in other parts of the Quran to refer to the creation and not the ordering of the earth. And you could see, for example, Quran 15:19. Was creation an act of bringing together or an act of splitting apart? Fundamental question. Muslims who are eager to find confirmation of the supposedly miraculous nature of the Quran will point to Quran 21:30, which says, "Have not those who disbelieve known that the heavens and the earth were of one piece? Then we parted them, and we made every living thing of water. Will they not then believe?" And they cite this verse as a description of the Big Bang and an expanding universe. This has to be a most optimistic interpretation, don't you think? What they also don't mention is that this verse is directly contradicted by another one that describes creation as a process of contraction. It says, "Moreover, he comprehended in his design the sky, and it had been as smoke. He said to it, and to the earth, Come ye together, willingly or unwillingly. And they said, We do come together, in willing obedience." That's Quran 41:11. How long did Allah take to create? Several verses in the Quran make it clear that he took 6 days to complete the creation. For example, "Verily your Lord is Allah, who created the heaven and the earth in 6 days, and is firmly established on the throne of authority, regulating and governing all things. No intercessor can plead with him, except after his leave hath been obtained. This is Allah your Lord. Him therefore serve ye. Will you not receive admonition?" So, turning to Quran 41:9-12, it says, "Say, is it that ye deny him who created the earth in 2 days? And do you join equals with him? He is the Lord of all the worlds." Do I need to say any more on that one? So, what did Allah use to create humanity with? Well, the Quran contains at least 5 contradictory statements on this one about the materials used in the creation of man. It should be noted that all of these statements are standalone and occur in passages revealed years apart. Claims that we're dealing with some kind of recipe are quite absurd because of that. And according to the Quran, Allah variously used the following to create human beings. So, puppy dogs' tails, oh no, it's not that one, but blood, proclaim, or read, it says, "In the name of thy Lord and Cherisher, who created man, out of a mere clot of congealed blood. And the next one is water. Is it he who has created man from water, it says? And then we have clay. We created man from sounding clay, from mud moulded into shape. Notice the we there. But there's also dust. Among his signs is this, that he created you from dust. But, if that's not confusing enough, you're also made from nothing. Allah createth what he willeth, when he hath decreed a plan. He but saith to it, be, and it is. So it should be noted that these verses are widely separated in terms of their place in the Quran and their time of origin, and there's no indication in any of these verses that they're describing a part of a process. Instead, all of them make standalone and contradictory statements about the way in which humanity was created. And the standard Muslim answer to this dilemma is some kind of recipe, which also doesn't solve the dilemma. So what do you think unbelievers will eat in hell? Because it tells you this as well. And it's a rather delicious irony that the menu of hell provides us with one of many opportunities to prove yet another contradiction. Look at what Allah has in store for unbelievers. Quran 69:36 describes the day of judgment and states that those sent to hell on that day will get no food except from the discharge of wounds. So, pus, lovely. Yet in Quran 88:6 it says, no food except dari, and that's a thorny, poisonous plant. The verses above clearly contradict each other, and to complicate matters further, Quran 37:66 tells us that residents will eat from the tree of Zakum, thus introducing another menu item and another classic contradiction. Are Muslims allowed to drink alcohol? Most people are aware that Muslims are not supposed to drink alcohol, and on the face of it, the case seems open and shut, because Quran 590 says, O you who believe, strong drink and games of chance and idols and divine arrows are only an infamy of Satan's handiwork. Leave it aside that you may succeed. But that's not all the Quran has to say on the topic, because in 443, it doesn't take believers to task for drinking, but it does say that they should not come to pray when they are drunk. In Quran 16:67, Allah reminds people of all the blessings that he bestows on humanity. He says, and from the fruit of the date palm and the vine, ye get out wholesome drink and food. Behold, in this also is a sign for those who are wise. Note that drink is not grape juice. The Arabic word sakaran is related to the same word that is used in Quran 4:43, sakura, to describe drunkenness. It can therefore be translated as intoxicating drink. So, here, the handiwork of Satan is being described as a blessing of Allah to humanity. Now, you'd think that the Quran would say who the first Muslim was, or that at least they'd be agreed upon it. Allah was fairly liberal when he bestowed the title of the first Muslim, though. He tells a host of people that they are the first Muslims. Each of these instances obviously contradicts the others. Here's the candidates. Muhammad, it says, and I am commanded to be the first of those who bow to Allah in Islam. Or was it Moses who said, glory be to thee I turn in repentance, and am the first to believe? Or was it Abraham who says, and this was the legacy that Abraham left his sons, and so did Jacob. O my sons, Allah hath chosen the faith for you, then die not except in the faith of Islam. Or was it Adam? Allah did choose Adam and Noah, the family of Abraham, and the family of Imran, above all people. Or was it Egyptian magicians? It says, lo, we ardently hope that our Lord will forgive us our sins, because we are the first of the believers. That's Quran 26:51. Or was it Jesus and his disciples? Because it says, when Jesus found unbelief on their part, he said, who will be my helpers to the work of Allah? Said the disciples, we are Allah's helpers. We believe in Allah, and do thou bear witness that we are Muslim. So Muslims tried to resolve this contradiction by claiming that each of these people was the first Muslim among his own people. And this idea obviously isn't present in the text, and the only reason that one could make such a claim would be in an attempt to get rid of the contradiction. And the attempt to resolve the contradiction also can't withstand even a moment of critical questioning. Quran 3:67 states that Abraham was not a Jew or a Christian, but a Muslim. Yet when Moses is discussed in Quran 7:143, he declares that he is the first to believe. Are they from different people? No, they're not. And they stand in the same historical tradition. Moses came into the frame after the descendants of Abraham ran into trouble in Egypt. And as a matter of fact, Moses is portrayed as fulfilling the promises that Allah made through Abraham. It would, in this context, be exceedingly strange and awkward if he identified himself as the first believer, especially in an already believing community with a clear memory of Abraham as the father of the faithful. Is there any compulsion in religion or in Islam? One of the most celebrated tolerance verses in the Quran is 2:256. Let there be no compulsion in religion. Truth stands out clear from error, it says. But this heartwarming sentiment is directly contradicted by 8:39, where Allah speaks of the prescribed Muslim reaction to those who persist in unbelief. It says, and fight them until there is no fitna, and until the religion, all of it, is for Allah. And if they cease, then indeed Allah is seeing of what they do. In this verse, Muslims are given a clear military objective to fight their enemies until all religion is for Allah. They are therefore to fight to gain a religious objective, namely to compel people to accept Allah's religion. The very fact that this objective is spelled out flatly contradicts the claim that there is no compulsion in their religion. There's a few general absurdities too. The story of the Jewish patriarch Joseph being sold into slavery is dated about 2000 BCE. The Quran relates it as follows. Joseph's brethren sold him for a miserable price, for a few dirhams counted out. In such low estimation did they hold him. And that's Quran 12:20. Now the word dirham is derived from the Greek drachma, and we get the first mention of the dirham or drachma at about the 12th century BCE. So, according to the Quran, Joseph was sold into slavery using a currency that wouldn't even be in circulation for another 700 years. Now this is all set against the backdrop, of course, that Muslims believe that the Quran is perfect in every last detail and that no human had any hand in composing it. So the question we need to ask is whether this is confirmed in the one area where we're able to accurately test its claims, namely science. If it's not found to be accurate, what reason would we have to trust the rest of what it teaches? Upon reading the Quran, the reader comes away with the distinct impression that it just reflects the cosmology of the 7th century Arabian desert. Creation is therefore very small in the Quran, with only the earth, moon, sun and stars in view. You can't see anything of an Allah's eye view perspective in the text. There's nothing of galaxies or an infinite universe, of the earth spinning on its axis, or of black holes. These are all the things that Allah would have been able to point out, and that would have immensely impressed us today if we read it, although I would of course dispute the black hole thing. But take the point. Instead of the display of an impressive level of detail about the nature of the universe, we find a deeply flawed cosmology when compared to modern scientific knowledge. So you can see why the religious institutions have to shoot down modern scientific knowledge. Now, in addition to this, the Quran also contains a large number of scientific errors, and they include the fact that the Quranic earth is flat. Yes, it's interesting to note that while the knowledge that the earth is a globe was well established before the coming of Islam, the Quran persists in describing the earth as flat. And this is evident in the way in which the creation of the earth is most often described in the Quran as the spreading out of a carpet. Such as, and the earth we have spread out like a carpet, it says, set thereon mountains, firm and immovable. Elsewhere it says, he who hath made for you the earth like a carpet spread out. has enabled you to go about therein by roads and channels, and has sent down water from the sky. It also says, Yea, the same that has made for you the earth like a carpet spread out. And there are others. We keep getting this spread out and carpet thing going on. There's many of them. But the implications of these verses has to be quite apparent. The author of the Quran had no idea of a round earth. The wordplay that many Muslim apologists engage in to try and explain away this fact is entirely unconvincing. The fact that the Quran teaches of a flat earth is confirmed by the following verses. Quran 2:22 refers to the heavens as a building or a canopy built upon a flat foundation of earth. 886 tells the story of Zulkarnain, who travelled across the face of the earth until he reached the setting of the sun. He found it set in a spring of murky water. Now, ignoring that this is rather a ridiculous explanation of a sunset, it's still worth pointing out that this kind of journey would only be possible across the face of a completely flat earth. Quran 18:47 makes it clear that the only reason we don't see that the earth is completely flat is the existence of mountains. However, Allah will take care of this in the future, because he says, one day we shall remove the mountains, and thou wilt see the earth as a level stretch, and we shall gather them all together, nor shall we leave out any one of them. So, some Muslim apologists desperately try to get away from the clear teaching of the Quran that the earth is flat, something which is also confirmed by several of the hadiths. This is the main lawmaking and traditional body of Islam. By claiming that the Quran 79:30 refers to the earth as being in the shape of an ostrich egg. And this is wishful thinking of the highest order. The verse reads in English, and after that he spread the earth. The Arabic can be transliterated as dahaha. Now, apologists claim that dahaha can be translated as egg-shaped. However, the root form of that word means to spread, expand, extend, or widen a surface. No eggs in sight. So where does this strange ostrich egg come from? It seems that someone, either willfully or through ignorance, twisted an illustration in Lane's Arabic lexicon. Lane mentions that this word is sometimes used to describe how an ostrich prepares a place for laying eggs by flattening out a surface where the eggs can be deposited. The word is therefore used to describe the flat surface where the egg is laid, and not the egg itself. The Quran teaches that we live in a very simple universe with the earth at its centre. But if it really was from Allah, who presumably has total knowledge of the entire universe, it would have contained some traces of the vastness and complexity of the universe which we inhabit. What we instead get is a description of things that would have been well known to anyone gazing up into the night sky from the Arabian desert. The Quranic universe contains exactly two elements, the earth and the heavens, and there's nothing else in that universe. This is repeatedly confirmed in many statements speaking of the totality of Allah's knowledge. For example, O our Lord, truly thou dost know what we conceal and what we reveal, for nothing whatever is hidden from Allah, whether on earth or in heaven. Quran 14:38. The heavens and the earth are described as follows. The earth is flat. The earth is at the center of the universe. The Quran describes the heavens as solid and held firmly in place by Allah, lest they fall on the earth. And within this solid mass, the moon, the sun, both have their appointed places and orbits. These orbits follow each other to ensure that the sun and the moon don't crash into each other. And at the center of these orbits is the earth, a place from where the courses of the orbit of the sun around it can supposedly be observed. So this view of a universe with the earth at its center is repeatedly confirmed as correct and orthodox by the Hadith collections. There are 7 heavens containing 7 planets in which the stars are nearer to earth than the moon, according to the Quran. But beware, because shooting stars, according to the Quran, are missiles for devils. When a meteoroid enters the atmosphere, ram pressure and chemical interaction with the atmospheric gases cause the body to heat up and emit light, thus forming a fireball, also known as a meteor or shooting falling star. The Quran, however, has a rather more interesting take on the matter. It says, "And verily, we have beautified the world's heaven with lamps, and we have made them missiles for the devils, and for them we have prepared the doom of flame." Now, Muslim apologists respond to this by stating that the verse is to be taken figuratively. So we're then left with another question. Are we to understand that the Quran should always be taken literally when it's confirmed by modern science, and should always be taken figuratively when it's contradicted by it? Many of the points I've made so far have dealt with issues relating to cosmology and astronomy. The Quran is just as inaccurate at the smaller end of science, though, because it contains a host of errors in the areas of biology, embryology, and zoology. And these include the fact that sperm comes from somewhere between the rib and the backbone. Also, Quranic embryology knows nothing of the ovum. It says that bones are formed before muscles, and that corn only grows with 100 grains. There are many other scientific and cosmological errors that can be pointed out in the pages of the Quran, but I'm sure you'll agree that the case has been made, and you could actually go on forever with this. But I won't. What I would like to highlight once again, among all of the other discrepancies, is the fact that this belief system that's spreading throughout communities in the UK and around the world, that the earth is flat, well, now you know where it comes from, just in case you didn't before. So if you happen to be one of the people out there who's believing in the flat earth, or worse still, spreading the nonsense, then, well, just feel around you. Feel above your shoulders. Can you feel the strings? Who's pulling them? Wake up.
That mysterious kind that plays like a restless kitten in the back of my mind, that wakes me from my sleep with a story to tell, always true, always true. The love I want is that glorious kind that lifts me high above the crowd, drops me
The amazing Gail Dorsey, always true. I think it's fair to say that most listeners to this show would agree, to some degree, that a global awakening has been taking place in the consciousness of humanity. One which has brought information, data and knowledge into the field of public understanding, or at least perception. And that accepted, what do you personally think is the most important aspect of your learning so far? And by this I mean, which aspect of our new knowledge is most useful and likely to assist us, the people, in challenging and resisting the New World Order, or the Synagogue of Satan, or the Illuminati, or whatever name or title you wish to cast upon the deceivers of this world, in order to gain personal sovereignty and a fairer world for all. These fields necessarily include subjects like geopolitics, neopolitics, exopolitics, history, religion, reality, archaeology, astroarchaeology, health, medicine, alchemy, megalith builders, the pyramids, sacred geometry, spirituality, Gnosticism, Kabbalah, numerology, law, statute, and common law, tarot, money, corruption, paedophile rings, satanic ritual child abuse, and the list could go on for an eternity. If you grasp any, some, or all of these studies or centres of activism, can you make sense of who is doing what and what the solution in each field could or should be? Can you consider the depths of each field and rationalise just what the hell we should do, whilst then proceeding to effectively do it, regardless of your own personal ability to fund anything in the first place, financially, spiritually, energetically, or psychologically? Stop for a moment to consider that the awakening, by definition, involves an infinite number of fields of knowledge combining into a greater whole, a greater understanding. And the more that greater whole materializes, the more falsehood is exposed as it bears itself under the new and more informed light of the scrutiny of the people. Those who support the falsehoods will scream louder and louder as they slowly realize that they're removing themselves from the new meme pool, you might say. None of the subjects we all research or become active upon are unimportant. They're all of equal importance, and it is our individual jobs to do our best in our own individual fields, wherever life has put us, whilst looking to see how the greater picture merges, like physics does into chemistry and that into biology. Although you might see shortly, it's more like numbers into physics and physics into chemistry and chemistry into life. But we're here perhaps to share that knowledge so that others can affirm or disprove it toward the greater goal of cooperation in all fields. What we need to develop is holistic thinking and equally holistic systems for our society. And let's not get too pedantic about the word society. It's just one I use. All these fields are important and none are to be discredited. Well, maybe one or two. But the point is that having identified the problems we are faced with, an equal number of potential answers spring up. And as these are infinite, we've got a logical dilemma, best summed up by, we're going to need a bigger boat, or we're fucked. But we don't need a bigger boat. We just need to take a closer look at the one we're in, and then look at the one that our enemy is in. They are legion, and we can't moor alongside them in open seas, or take them on in their own dock. So what can we do? Well, look at the boat they sail in. It's made of money. It's our money. And the pirates, the corrupt financial globalists, and others, are all down below feasting and debauching. It contains all the other scumbag problems, funds most of them, causes them all. So they're all packed into one very top-heavy boat, and you might have noticed some are jumping. We can't get our boat close without being sunk, so we mustn't try, other than to distract them from our next move, as a movement, because that's the move which topples their ship over and sends them back to Davy Jones' locker. Now listen now to Ken O'Keefe. His own words explain clearly the point that I've been making in public for the last 9 years. Do listen to this, it's brilliant.
I have come to believe in its most simple, boiled down understanding that the path to a better world is a 3-step process. A lot of people talk about peace. That's always kind of pissed me off a bit, because peace at the end of a barrel of a gun, or peace without justice, as far as I'm concerned, is a peace not worth having. I'd rather die free than live in an oppressed, tyrannical world. Even if I, as a white person from the West, can live a comparatively good life, which I could. I've had that. I've lived in Hawaii. I've had my own business. I've had money. I've lived in paradise. But am I able to do that in good conscience and simply go on about my business and forget about the rest of the world? That does not work for me. If we truly, truly face up to the challenges before us, it is a lot easier than we think to actually rectify the issues that we're facing. And it's really quite ironic from my experience, how people even today hold a very kind of pessimistic view, and yet right there in front of you, you can see changes that are so profound that if you really open your mind up and get out of sort of the training, the negative perception of reality. Of course, what's the news? The news is nothing but a bunch of bad news. It's all bad. Everything's horrible. There is no solutions. The politicians are corrupt. War everywhere. This is very, very important to understand. The reason why that's being done is because it gets you in a cynical point of view. It gets you to believe that there's nothing that you can do, that you are insignificant, and anything that you might venture to do is foolhardy at best. Accept the reality. This is very common in the West in particular, because we have a lot to lose in terms of material. And we've been intoxicated and entranced with the idea of material gain. And the cost of that is that we've actually sacrificed the much more profound, the spiritual and the more philosophical aspects of life, which hold far greater value than anything physical. You need the physical to survive, but in terms to truly grow on a spiritual level, it has hardly anything to do with that growth. This is a process that I see playing out, and 5 years ago, 10 years ago, there was a whole lot less of that. So this is an amazing, amazing time to be alive. Truly amazing, and I genuinely believe that it is our generation right now that is going to decide the fate of life on planet Earth. My story in brief is I grew up in a charmed existence, Southern California, surfing, playing football, not soccer, football, proper football. I had a beautiful life, a loving mother, and I always felt a little bit different. I always kind of walked my own path, but I wasn't an awkward kid. I had friends who were popular. I was reasonably popular myself, I suppose. So I never felt socially awkward per se, but I always knew something was amiss. I could tell that early in school. From an early age, I could tell this was bullshit, quite frankly, most of it. And, at the same time, I had a wonderful life. I really did. And at the age of 19, I joined the Marine Corps because I thought I was a little lacking in discipline and initiative. I had been raised by my mother. She did spoil me. God love her. I love her love her immensely. But, she's a woman, and women and mothers dote over their only child, and they spoil us. And I didn't really learn how to be a man because I didn't have a man. So I didn't know it at the time, but I joined the Marine Corps because I was looking for the father that I never had. And of course, I had no idea of the implications of doing this. I believed all the spoon-fed crap of, my nation's the greatest in the world, freedom and democracy and all this sort of stuff. And while I was in the Marine Corps, I ended up speaking out about abuse of power. One of the things they teach in the Marine Corps is leadership by example. And my leaders were not leading by example. They were abusing their position of authority. And when I spoke out about that, I made a conscious decision to do it openly. I could have done it clandestinely, but I didn't think that was the honorable thing to do. So I did an honorable thing. And I was punished severely. And it shattered the illusion of the Marine Corps being about honor and integrity. I realized that I had become a slave, that I had imposed slavery upon myself, volunteered for it, literally, and that I could kill or be killed as a result of this decision. And it caused me to reflect deeply on everything that I had come to believe. And what it did was it put me in a mindset that allowed me to receive information that previously I never would have accepted. Burning the flag is an example. When I was a younger man, I thought, man, any bastard who wants to do that, I look at that now in a completely different way, and I never would have heard any argument to the contrary. It opened me up to information, and in that context, I indulged in a very serious course of self-study, independent study, and I sought out what I thought were authoritative voices in various aspects of life, philosophy, history, and so on and so forth. And in the process of having an open mind, truly open, and really looking at alternative sources of information, I came to realize that virtually everything that I had been taught was the opposite of the truth, literally. And the more I got deep into it, initially it made me very angry. I still have anger, but the anger is very much based on love. Love of this beautiful planet, of this human family, and our extended family of life that embraces all living creatures. What a beautiful blessing we've got, and how fucking outrageous that we're destroying that. And anyway, from that, I've walked a very unique path. I could go on and on and on about many different things that I've been involved in, but the bottom line is I have followed my heart. I have done what I felt was right, and oftentimes that was the opposite of what any of my friends and family and those who love me would have advised. In fact, many times I've done things that they all would have thought and said was crazy and you shouldn't do it. Every time I've done that, it's ended up being the greatest blessing. And that even includes, in the heartache and the pain, the injustice, the suffering, were great, great, great blessings. I'm not just a believer, I am an applier of the principle of doing what you believe is right, no matter what the consequence. And while I've made many mistakes in terms of not honoring my obligations to my immediate family, being very focused on the bigger, broader picture without actually taking care of my domestic responsibilities and whatnot, thankfully I've grown through that phase. I've become a wiser man, and I've applied the principle of acting on what you believe in your heart is right. And what a beautiful path that is. I don't care what anybody says. If you act that way with genuine intention and with a lack of fear and some level of intelligence, boy, oh boy, what an amazing path that is. 46 years old now. I don't know how much time I'll have in this plane, but I can damn sure guarantee that I will make the most of it. And if the past is any reflection of future, boy, oh boy, the blessings that are coming my way, and I hope for the rest of the world, should we adopt this kind of philosophy and approach to life, I have no doubt whatsoever that we can achieve a better world, something that we can be truly proud and happy to hand over to our children. And quite frankly, to me, that is the greatest responsibility of all. If we are turning a blind eye and pretending as if the problems are not severe, grave, to the point of complete total annihilation, personal and collective annihilation is a distinct possibility. If we don't face this, we may very well hand that over to our children. And I think that's a dereliction of our duty, to say the least, and we should be ashamed of ourselves if indeed we hand over this world in a worse state. But where I see us right now in terms of humanity, its evolution, its growth, its understanding, its consciousness, it is absolutely undeniable from my perspective that the growth of consciousness is unparalleled in human history. We know of no time where we have grown and understood more and more and more at such an accelerated pace as we do now, and I find that extremely exciting, and I believe it is the precondition to creating a better world. So I'm not sure which way it's going to go, quite frankly. I think it's beyond ridiculous to assume that it's all going to be all right. At the same time, we shouldn't operate on fear. We have an opportunity. It truly is up to us. If we do what we're capable of, boy, oh boy, people are not even going to recognize the world that we're going to have in the future. A much better world, a sane world, in which everyone has all that is needed. And in fact, we can live in a state of abundance. And actually, instead of fighting and killing each other over our differences, which we currently do, we will celebrate these differences and say, wow, what an amazing perspective. Even though I don't necessarily agree, how beautiful is that? That's the world that I can see. I can literally see it, and I believe we'll have it if we do what we're capable of. If there was one physical subject, one material subject that we should focus on, in my opinion, it is very clear that the head of the snake is the financial system. We can argue till the end of time about who runs the world. Is it the Jesuits? Is it the reptilians? Is it the Illuminati? Is it the Freemasons? We can go on and on and on and on about this. But I don't think it is reasonable to even begin arguing about the mechanism that is used to exert this control. The mechanism is finance. The whole point of finance is to indebt, otherwise to enslave. What is a mortgage? I mean, what does that stand for? It's a death grip. So when you get a mortgage, you have a death grip held over you because you are in debt. You don't even own the house. The bank owns the house that loans you the money to buy the house, unless you're fortunate enough to have all the money to buy it outright. And even then, you can be taxed by the government, and if you fail to keep up with those taxes, the government can then take it from you. The whole system is based on a financial fraud, which effectively takes the power that we have and it gives it to a tiny group of individuals who are running the world through the control of finance. With the infinite supply of money that we have allowed them to take, they have literally an infinite supply of money, and with that money, and from their psychopathic point of view, they have bought everything and everyone who can be bought. So those of us who cannot be bought, because we operate on a level that goes way beyond the material, we are not rewarded for such behavior. We are punished for such behavior. And the most slovenly, disgustingly criminal, pedophilia, corrupt moral individuals, those are the ones that are rewarded in this system, which is upside down.
We were born upside down.
We reward the corrupt, we reward the liars, we reward the people with no morals at all, and usually we compromise them under this system in terms of maybe a videotape. Maybe Barack Obama is gay. Maybe we have videotape of him having sex with another man, or perhaps some other acts that may be not so popular amongst many of the electorate. Or maybe we have videos of political leaders having sex with little boys or little girls. If I was in charge of the world and I was a psychopath and completely drunk on my own power, you can bet damn sure that's what I would do. I wouldn't allow anyone in a position of power who wasn't completely compromised. When you have an infinite supply of money, you can do this. Take that supply of money away, take that power back, put it in the hands of the people, get rid of fractional reserve banking, which is an obscenity in itself. Listen to the lessons of Jesus Christ. If you're a Christian who got really pissed off when he went to the temple and he saw what the money changers were doing, let's take back control of the issuance of money, and not just on a national level. I'm happy to see in Denmark that you have your own currency. You don't have the euro. But on every country's level, they should be issuing their own currency in a transparent, non-usury based way in which it really, truly benefits the people. And in that way, we can literally free ourselves of the banking debt which is drowning us all. And we can stop scrambling for the crumbs from the table of these filthy rich psychopaths and live in a state of abundance just by changing this one thing. And I'm not just talking about abundance for Western nations who have an artificially inflated value with their currencies. We all in the West are guilty of having that reward while the rest of the world is sucking on it. Every nation in the world can use a sensible financial policy to liberate themselves, to have world-class education, infrastructure, everything that a healthy society would require can be had in the worst, most corrupt African country, in any part of the world. We can all have that if we simply change that one thing. John F. Kennedy did that about 6 months before he was taken out. He issued United States notes as opposed to Federal Reserve notes. I can assure you the powers that be knew the power of that act, and they took him right out. So the bottom line is, if we as people understand this very simple principle, just this one thing, change this one thing, we can solve every other problem you can name. I don't care what the problem is. I can bring it back to the financial system and an infinite supply of money for a bunch of psychopaths who are running the world, as opposed to an abundant supply of money for all of us. So in that sense, I'm very optimistic. This is not rocket science. I am not the smartest guy in the room. We can all understand this. And as soon as we do, we can exercise the same power that we had, but relinquished, and we can have a future for ourselves and our children. There's a lot to be optimistic about, quite frankly.
It was clear to me many years ago that once the people at large have the time to consider all the new information being thrown at them, so much of which I'd become aware of long before, so this was just a matter of logical extension, they would naturally and almost invariably conclude that there is only one central and core aspect to this question of global control, that being money and its issuers. And whereas only a few years ago, to suggest what you have just heard Ken O'Keefe conclude, you would have been derided. Now there's a new understanding developing, and as he's rightfully pointed out, there is only one field which we, as a resistance movement, should focus upon. It happens to be the only one which the people could actually intervene in anyway. How lucky is that? But having concluded that we must do something in this specific area of money, the next question, logically, is what can we do? And this is exactly where the movements have been floundering. But it is what I've been majoring on in most interviews from the start. So I'd encourage you to find them on YouTube perhaps and listen in. It's happening now, not tomorrow. I'm often asked, have I changed my mind about anything? Well, of course I have, in terms of details of who's doing what, how they do it, etc., etc. But my core concept has always been one. And in some ways, you could say that the prime number cross acts as a distraction from that. People talk to me about that, but seem to be missing the greater point about the issuance of our currency and what we can do. So let me add a bit more detail tonight if I can. I've proposed a method whereby we ask our leaders a question, publicly and openly, and I've suggested that this simple act is actually far more potent and resonant than you might at first imagine. Let me explain a bit further. The act of congregating to ask a question is not a protest. It's a right which we all have, and any who were to stand in the way of a peaceful and respectful approach to our leaders, to ask them a question in full public view, would be seen for what they are, and would no doubt pay the political consequences. We live in strange times, but among that strangeness there are certain realities and realisms. One of those is that there is a controlling power elite ruling this world. Another is that it consists of two bloodlines. These details are arguable, but just follow this. Two bloodlines, and that these bloodlines share kingship and control, each line having that power for a denoted time. When that time is up, it's the duty of the ruling bloodline to hand over control of the world to the other. The incoming bloodline is the Merovingian dynasty. And yes, it is a reality that they exist and that they claim the divine right to rule, just as our current rulers do. The exchange of power, though, never goes smoothly, and they'll hold out for as long as possible before conceding, and even go to war against each other. And I believe you can see this going on around you now. The time of this transition is symbolized and literally enacted by them as a ceremony, though the public may not know what they're seeing. In fact, I'd be amazed if they do. That's the whole point of it. The one who forces the change of dynasty and calls time on the outgoing dynasty in their own mythology and pageantry is symbolized as the Black Knight. That within the Arthurian and Grail mythology, but it does go way beyond that. So I wondered years ago, what would be the effect if a Black Knight were to stand up with the people right at the time when they are preparing to stage their own exchange of power and ask them the Grail question in full public view. A simple question becomes an act of hermetic magic, one which operates at so many levels of consciousness that it acts as a counter-spell, you could say, to the one that they've cast upon the people, their money. Now, I know it sounds almost childlike to use the word magic, but I'd ask you to listen to previous shows where I refer to the asking of the question, and I refer to magic too. Word magic, indeed. It is this act itself which is the magical element, one which complies with every occult and hermetic philosophy, and therefore reality and nature too. A simple question asked correctly, in the right way, at the right time, energized by the conscious intention of as many people as possible, becomes a literal act of magic, one which those we oppose would have no control over. It is possible, maybe, for only one moment in history, for the people to take on the banksters, if you want to call them that, but it goes so far beyond that. In fact, in many ways, this Babylon's banksters thing is a distraction, and that's no discredit to the guy who's written the book by that title. It's a great title. I just think this Babylon thing kind of gets misperceived by those who are learning this stuff today, let's say. Don't lose sight of the fact that the populations are being incited to violence by the breakdown of their societies as they knew them, and the intrusion of globalism, Zionism, Islam, all masquerading as multiculturalism. It is the stated intent of all of these bodies to convert the world to their belief systems. Don't believe me? Go and read their doctrines, then look around you and weep. Of course, I take it one step further by suggesting they are all one and the same. You could even call it octagon, if you wish. But that's going into another realm. The question needs to be asked, and I propose a Signet committee to do just that in full public view. It's not just another scheme to save us or to bring us all together. It won't be what you expect. What's the relevance of Signet? Well, absolutely none, other than whatever meaning you assign to it. It kind of works on that level. But I will talk in much more detail on this in another episode. I just wanted to draw your attention tonight to the simplicity of the principle of asking the question, and to attach that in your minds to the underlying philosophies I've mentioned here and in previous shows. As to how the principle abides by every law, natural, occult or otherwise, and is strictly non-political and non-denominational, I'll go into it then. Notice that word, non-denominational, good word. Notice it has demon in it. Almost.
I don't want knowledge. I want certainty. I
That was a track called Law, Earthlings on Fire by the late David Bowie. And now, so what about the prime number cross? It's probably best that I just describe my perception of this and how it came to be relevant to me. I would like to make it clear once again, though, that the prime number cross is the work of Peter Plichter. It seems, as a subject, to have become firmly attached to all that I talk about. But I want to reiterate that understanding this is not important in terms of solving our political and financial realities. It bears no relevance to anything you need to worry about, but it is, at the same time, hugely relevant for any who are seeking answers to the greater questions, those concerning life, death, creation, consciousness, matter, energy, reality, whatever you want. These are two different fields of study I'm talking about tonight. One is how to use hermetic magic in the form of a spoken question to undo the financial scam and bring about the return of financial power to all the people. This you can engage and can influence simply by asking it. That question, of course, hasn't been uttered yet, if you're wondering what it is. The other is the prime number cross. It engages you. Let me explain. Earlier tonight I mentioned numbers, arithmetic, mathematics, and particularly, of course, the prime numbers. In the last show I pondered the question at the root of mathematics concerning its amazing ability to model and predict aspects of reality to an accuracy which begs the question, is reality mathematical? It's the old debate. I talked about mathematical models of reality, and probably the best known example of this would be E equals mc squared, Einstein's little gem. This is a model of reality expressed as an equation, one which defines a geometry. We're told that it says that matter and energy are but different aspects of the same thing, whatever that is, and that they are connected by an expansion factor which is huge. That is the square of the speed of light. The symbol for the speed of light is always c. While it crosses my mind, there's a simple way to visualize and understand what this geometry, E equals mc squared, actually means. Because its geometry is nothing other than a triangle. If you were to place the value of mass on one side of a triangle, and by that I mean to make one side that value, that length, and place the value of c squared on another side, E, the energy value, will be the length of the third side, and change any one of those factors, and the other two will adjust relatively and strictly to that triangular geometry, whereby the hypotenuse, remember that one, is always equal to the sum of the squares of the other two sides. So it's not hard to visualize the complexity of this equation in a much simpler way. It's not only simpler to understand, but it is in fact exactly what the more complex equation is describing. If only they taught you that at school, eh? Anyway, once you can visualize that energy equals mass times the square of the speed of light, and that this implies that energy and mass, being matter, mass and matter, are but different aspects of the same thing. Enter the prime number cross to really fuck things up, but in the process, opening up a whole new vista. Actually, that word vista has lost some of its grandeur, don't you think, as a result of Microsoft Windows? They've tainted it. Anyway, so prime numbers, you'll recall, are those divisible by only 1 and itself. 2 is the only even prime, right? So they progress in sequence as 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, and so on. 2 can be representative of something profoundly common in nature. The octave. You're right in thinking that an octave is 8, so what does 2 have to do with it? Well, in music, as Pythagoras pointed out, if you double the length of a vibrating string, you get an octave change in its pitch. That is, whatever frequency or note you start with, if you double it, its frequency is 1 octave higher. Doubling, when you see it in nature, can therefore be viewed as a harmonic octave in operation, quite literally. Before looking at the primes in particular, do grab a pencil and write them down as a visual aid only. I'd like to delve a little further into the octave and highlight a few things and a few numbers which I did talk about in Series 1, if it's even still out there. When talking about the octave, we're also talking about Hermetic science, literally. So don't be confused by high titles. It's simple. Always is. Don't look for complexity. That's a smokescreen. Hermetic science, or the Hermetic code, is music. This is an oversimplification, and a purist would object, and I'd agree with them, but probably they'd uphold the point I'm making. A Freemason, for example, seeks to square his potential by pursuing a course of study or discipline, be it a grade or a personal venture. Notice that this is an electrical engineering term. Square the potential. But I digress. There are 8 notes in an octave. The first note, let's call it A, at 440 cycles a second, or hertz. Again, a purist would say that's actually 432, but that's not relevant here yet. The first note, A, is the same as the last note. So if you can imagine the musical scale, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, that's a whole octave and a doubling in frequency from 440 cycles per second to 880. As the first note is also the last in the octave, you could say alpha is omega. Now imagine 3 octaves of ascending notes, and this would necessarily have 3 groups of 8 notes, wouldn't it? But as 2 of those octaves share their first and last notes, there are in fact only 22 notes in a triple octave. By the same account, you could say that 1 octave on its own actually only has 7 notes. That would be A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, because A, the top or the last one, is the same as the first. So there are clearly only 7 distinct tones in an octave. Call them Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Ti, and then of course the last Do if you want to make 8 for clarity. The point being that 22, that's 3 octaves, over 7, that's 1 octave, is the ancients' definition of pi, the strange number which defines circular and spherical geometry, better known as 3.1417, etc. Do listen again on the podcast and get your head around this simple model and realize that it's not made up. It's there to observe and measure at every level. It's just that we tend not to make the connections. But you will find this one beautiful, and I don't think it's an exaggeration to say it's one of the keys to nature. And all of that before even looking at the primes.
Recorded moon, craving to its core, whispered spotlight color, darkening not before. Wandered among heavenly body, wandered among little mirrors and smoke flow, the hungry and crossed together, fiery and divine. Heavenly body, one lunar mind. Moons, stars, all the matter we can see. The vastness of space means nothing at all to me. You. Darkening empirical cold, burning effect. Fearful by this nothing, so two of people. One lunar month, heavenly body. One lunar month. Moons, stars, all the matter we can't see. The vastness of space means nothing at all to me. We can't see. The vastness of space means nothing at all to me.
That was Lisa Ronson, daughter of Mick Ronson, with a track of her own called One Lunar Month.
Right, just today they found the largest rocky world was announced. It's a massive planet. It's 500 light years away in the constellation of Aries.
Rocky World?
Yeah, like Rocky Robin,
Not boxing or something?
No. It's
a world of boxers.
It's made of rock, and I guess it's got kind of refractory stuff in there, like metal as well, metal and rock kind of. So it's like a massive Earth, but it shouldn't be as big as it is now. They've really imaginatively called this thing BD plus 20594b. So I'm going to call it Big Dick. Me being Richard. We all know what's short for Richard. Do I need to spell it out? So I'm going to call this thing Big Dick, okay? So right, it's so large, this thing, you know, it's 17 Earth masses.
Are you talking about your cock, or are we back to the planet now? It totally clips of the sun every time he goes for a wee.
We're back to the planet.
All right,
yeah.
Sorry then.
Hey, if it was that big, the Earth wouldn't be here. Put it that way.
Yeah. Okay.
Most women wouldn't be here neither. All right, so this thing's this thing's 16 times as massive as the Earth, but it's a little over twice as wide. So this thing's quite dense. Now Earth's density is about 5.5 grams per centimeter cubed. So
except in blood.
Yeah. Well, it's neutron star dense.
Sorry,
yeah,
I'll shut up.
That's to take nothing from the well-educated, well-rounded
person up on South Beach.
Yeah. Yeah. Whatever happened to the Popular People's Front?
Wasn't it the People's Popular Front?
I don't know. Are you sitting over there? Split up. Yeah. Anyway, the Earth's about 5.5 grams per centimeter cubed. That means if you care to go outside and get some bedrock and hammer and chisel out about a centimeter cube, it's gonna weigh roughly about 5.5 grams. So add that up to the times of the Earth, and it's pretty dense. But this thing's about 8 grams per centimeter cubed. So it's big and it's dense. But like I say, it's so large it should be gassy. So this thing's a colossal refractory object. It's like a colossal Earth. Now this thing should hold some kind of atmosphere if it's as big as they say it is, which they've compared it to Kepler 10c, which was the rocky mega Earth that they reported in 2014. first thought to be about 17 Earth masses, but recent measurements indicate that it's only about 14 times as massive as the Earth, which means the planet is probably encased in a shell of gas or water. So I guess the gravity on that thing would be pretty heavy as well. So if anything's going to be there, it's going to be very tall or very flat. I dare say very flat. People would be very, very short there. They'd probably have population of trillions.
Yeah.
They didn't say anything if it was in the Goldilocks zone, which is the kind of proverbial zone around stars where liquid water can exist. They didn't say anything about that. They didn't say how far it was away from its parent star. So no more news about that. No more news neither about what I talked about last week about the 9th planet that they'd found. No more news about that neither. But all right, I've got a bit of rich science for you for all the smokers, talkers, and midnight chokers out there, I guess. All me fellow wakey bakers, you know what we're talking about, yeah. And it's a bit of a science graph, and it's a science graph I've been talking about around Britain for quite a while now, and I think it's about time I got some recognition about it now.
Go for it, man.
Whatever your method, whether it's vaporization or spliffs or my favourite pipes, you know, I've put a bit more than spinach in my pipe, Popeye. I don't know what he puts in his. I think it is spinach though, but I wouldn't like to smoke that. But anyway, I've produced this graph, and it's based on a black body curve. Now, I'm not going to go into black body radiation curves or anything because people won't know what the hell I'm talking about. A few people might, but
on this show they will.
Yeah. Oh, okay. It's very highbrow. Well,
yeah.
Anything. Anyway, this is just it's a kind of measurement of intensity of light and kind of waves of light. But anyway, when you're having a Tony Toker or a schmirk or whatever you like to have.
I don't know what you're talking about, man.
Well, okay, I'm sure a lot of people out there do. No. When you're getting chonged, baked, fried, frazzled, mashed.
I know what you mean now. Yeah.
Caked. You know, red. Getting on cloud 9. You know, I can't think of many other ways to express it. Can you?
No.
And anyway, I've put this graph together, and what it is, if you think on the y-axis you've got intensity, and on the x-axis you've got time. Now, just after you exhale from your vape or your pipe or finish your spliff, whatever, it's quite intense, and you're kind of climbing up to this peak. So imagine a line on the graph going really high, really fast over time. So you're climbing up to this intense peak.
What shit are you smoking?
well, you know what I mean. Just as intense as it does get.
All right, yeah.
You know, and you get to that peak, and you really don't want to have kind of professional conversations or
professional conversations.
Yeah, and you don't really want to kind of run into your mother or anything like that at this particular time, or anyone who
I would hope not. Yeah.
Any one of them, you know, you don't want to.
I mean, anyone, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel this personally, and now every other person I've spoke to about this feels the same way. You know, you're not kind of relaxed off it until you're down on this kind of steady line. So you've climbed the intensity peak over a short period of time on the x-axis. So you've got this really high line on a short period of time, and then it dips a little while over time, and then it narrows out and then goes steadily, and that's when you're nice and chilled. And that's the science behind getting stoned, getting baked, getting mashed.
Does that appear on your bell curve? Because you've got your black body curve, so what's the point you're making? I can see, actually, he's got it graphed out here. There's an optimum moment. So, God. What happens at the optimum moment? What can you do then?
Well, if you're a
Is
Buddhist,
that where you start engaging the world?
well, if you're a Buddhist, you gain enlightenment.
All right.
If you're a pothead, you just kind of
Go to sleep.
yeah, you just drop off. Well, you wouldn't drop off. You might be so stoned you might actually enjoy watching daytime television and make it much more bearable kind of thing. Or if it's your day off, that's the kind of way you want it to be. That's the way you want it to work.
Do you think this is an advantage to you when you're Prime Minister? I
Mm.
mean, how would your day start as Prime Minister? Because you've got to be up early.
Well, if I can quote the goats, I'd pop out my sack, get the easies, supersedes and adhedes, and in fact, Rich start the day with a stupid fat J. It's a hip hop parade, everybody let me get some. That first pipe of the day is the best one. I'd rise with the sun, and I don't mean just wake up. I'd get caked till my eyes get baked up. I'd break through the weed just like it was grass. Break me off a nice big piece of black hash. Reach for the stash, cause you know what I want. A supercalifragilistic stupid fat blunt. Early in the morning, right before breakfast, smoke a fat spliff for the Buddha blessed. It's the best thing that happened since Frosted Flakes. 976 called Wake and Bake. Late to bed means late to rise. It's the wake and bake, baby, when I open my eyes. And that's how I'd start my day if I was Prime Minister. So vote Rich.
Brilliant. What would your answer to Europe be?
Well, first of all, would be leaving together and still would stand tall. Because maybe they'd seen us and welcomed us all. With so many light years to go, we're leaving ground. Will things ever be the same again with Europe? It's the final countdown. Ba-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da-da. Yeah, we should get away from this idea of a United States of Europe. You know, it's just ridiculous. We're so different. That's not to say we don't love our brothers and sisters from different countries. You know, we can all respect people's cultures and civilizations and even people's religions. We can respect. You know, as long as we're not fighting and battling each other, which is exactly what they want, by the way. And you can coin they as the hierarchy enslaving you. Thank you, Muad'Dib. Not Muad'Dib off Dune. Muad'Dib, who made the film 7/7 Ripple Effect. So yeah, I've just forgotten what we're talking about.
Everything, really.
The United States of Europe.
The United States of Europe. I heard that the whales that were being washed up.
Eight of them got washed up. But yeah, there seems to be a few things getting washed up on beaches. They reckon it's because the submarines use sonar and things, and it knocks off the tracking system.
There's all sorts washed up on this beach. It's got now to do with submarines. I
don't know who wears a condom to have sex in the sea. You know, because people are always like, there's so many condoms in the sea, and it's got how many people are wearing condoms in the sea to have sex? A quote said, the sexist, you didn't wear your wellies on the fucking beach. You're mac in the bath. Robin Hood. What a twat. Do you really think he didn't keep any of that wealth for himself?
When I look at you, what do you think I see? Everything I could ever need. You turn the page, I get to read. When we make love, a million stars unfold. Like there's something we could be. Oh, my sweet name, you're born once again for me. Have I told you today that I need you like an actor needs a role. Have I told you today I love you, body and soul? And when we talk, we teach the world to turn. With every word, she's in a spin. You write the song, and I get to sing. But have I told you today that I need you like a Pierrot needs a show, where the words of a song reveal everything all heaven knows. Oh, have I told you today I love you, body and soul? We talk all night, but I don't think you heard. Were my thoughts just words in vain? Oh, promise me something. We must talk again. 'Cause have I told you today that I need you? Though they tell me that it shows. Have I told you today I love you? Perhaps you don't know. Oh, have I told you today I love you, body and soul? Body and soul. I look in your eyes and see more than a book of words could ever hope to say. It could turn your creator religious, but just for a day. Hey, hey. Have I told you today that I love you, body and soul? Body and soul. I look in your eyes and see more than a book of words could ever hope to say. It could turn your creator religious, but just for a day. Have I told you today I love you, body and soul? Body and soul. Body and soul.
That was Body and Soul, one of my little ditties. So if that hasn't confused you, now ponder the following. We would agree that 8 is an octave and that 7 can be used to represent that too. We would agree that 24, the triple octave, can also be represented as 22 because of the shared notes in that sequence. And that 22 over 7 is pi. But Pythagoras proved that there are in fact 10 notes in a full octave of resonant frequency. Not only the 8 we know, but 2 more which he called the commas. These Pythagorean commas represent 2 additional tones within a resonant octave, which, if correctly tuned, will cause the octave to ascend to its full doubling. If they're not correctly tuned, they create a discordance and cause the octave to involve as opposed to evolve, to turn in upon itself, to detune and not achieve the perfect doubling. If somehow you feel that this is alluding to certain aspects of life and consciousness, you'd probably be correct. But don't lose sight of the fact that this is music we're talking about. And it is just as mysterious as to why and how music is able to stir us emotionally and in so many ways, to resonate with us literally or create a disharmony even. It's as amazing and mysterious as it is that mathematics describes reality so accurately. In fact, if you consider the two conundrums together, I suggest that you will see they are one and the same. Look, music is numbers in time, tempo, and in space. That's what it is, and it affects you because that's what time and space are too. This should become clearer soon, but for now, the concept I'm alluding to is that space itself is structured in a way that is identical to the distribution of the prime numbers, and that because of this, points of finite matter are required which are structured upon the reciprocal geometry. By this I mean that energy can, for example, expand in an infinite space at a speed and a geometry defined by the whole number series, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc., to infinity. Whereas the reciprocal geometry, that's instead of being 2, 3, and 4, etc., it's a half, a third, a quarter, you reciprocate the infinite whole number series, well, this defines matter. In truth, it is the prime numbers themselves and the patterns or the rhythms that they create which drive these processes. It's a known fact that music is based upon the prime number sequences. Pythagoras pointed out that the scale is achieved by halving, thirding, fifths, sevenths, and these divisions of a vibrating string. This is the basis of music theory and not disputed by anyone. These are the primes. Prime numbers are fundamental to the causality behind that which we perceive as music. You might begin to see why space itself, structured by prime number expansion, is the perfect medium for music, sound. So much could be said on this, but another time maybe. Whether I've expressed it to you clearly or not, what I'm saying is that prime numbers quite readily lay behind our reality and that nobody disputes this, but they've never understood it. Well, now you can. All that's in question really is to what extent and what it might mean. But there's a gap to fill out here, so let's think back to the prime numbers themselves. There's always been a mystery about them. It's been noticed that as numbers grow larger, the frequency of the prime numbers, their occurrences in the infinite stream of whole numbers, decreases. And the unanswerable question in mathematics is, do they ever actually stop? It was long ago noticed that the occurrences of primes seem to occur on either side of multiples of 6, like 6, 12, 18, 24, etc. Take any one of those and you will soon see that either side of them lays a prime number. 24, though, is an example of the exceptions to the rule. But notice that its prime twins would be 23 and 25. 23 is a prime, but 25 clearly is not. It is, however, the square of a previous prime. It's like a semi-prime. And if you track the primes for millions of places, you will find that they all do lay either side of multiples of 6. The only exceptions being squares of previous primes. Now this is a structure, but they can't find a pattern apparently. Even the fact that they all occur around multiples of 6 is not regarded as anything mysterious. Besides, the prime numbers 2 and 3 don't abide by the rule of 6. So, the pattern is a non-starter and can be overlooked. But do notice that 2 times 3 equals 6 anyway, but we'll get there. Consider this. If the rule states that the primes are ordered as twins laying either side of every multiple of 6, which it clearly does by simple observation, and the other rule demands that the only exceptions to that would appear to be the squares of previous primes in that pattern. Oh, and the number 3, the trinity, but I'll come back to that. Then, by logical extension, you must surely consider that 0 is also a multiple of 6, because 0 times 6 equals 0. It's a multiple of 6. And therefore the numbers -1 and +1 must also be prime numbers. It's long been debated as to whether or not 1 can be considered a prime number, and convention in mathematics considers it not to be, because it fucks up their mathematics if they do. Simple. But look, you've just seen it in your mind's eye. The primes are -1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, etc. A perfect sequence, really, because, if you recall, primes occur as twins either side of a multiple of 6. Take any multiple of 6 and apply -1 and +1 to it, and you get the prime numbers. Wow! Primes are driven in nature by a +1, -1 function. There is your duality laid bare. You're soon going to see under the veil of Isis. These patterns had not been seen before because in an infinite stream of whole numbers in a big line, there is no way to actually see any pattern. Or have they perhaps seen it before? Regardless of that for now, think again of the triple octave. 3 octaves, 3 times 8 equals 24, which can also be regarded as 22. Pi is 22/7. A triple octave of resonance divided by a single octave. So, 24 is hugely relevant. It was the Egyptian priesthood's most sacred number, and the others mentioned tonight were pretty damned important to them too. But they invented the 24-hour clock, and therefore the day as we know it. Interestingly, ponder this too. There's 26 letters in our alphabet, but there's actually only 24 sounds, because a couple of our letters double up with others in terms of the phonetic sounds that they make. So you've got 24 sounds that are possible to make with the human voice. I wonder what would happen if you assigned a number to each of those. You'd find that you get Kabbalah and a whole lot more. But again, I'm going off at a tangent. So put the infinite stream of numbers that we've been thinking about into a circle instead of a never-ending line. A circle defined by pi in so many ways, with its triple octave of numbers placed around it, and the circle itself, of course, being defined by pi. A simple 24-hour clock. And then look at the prime numbers as they occur on that clock. When you get to 24, in your mind's eye, start another circle above it, commencing with 24. Thereby accommodating an infinite stream of whole numbers into infinite circles, stacked on top of each other if you like, or consider it as a spiral, as hugely hinted at by our Egyptian brothers so long ago. What do you see? Well, all the prime numbers position themselves on the clock along 8 rays, which form the familiar cross of St. John, that of the Templars, basically. Imagine this. Mathematics has observed the geometries in nature, like the phi spiral, and that realization alone woke a whole world up to the wonderful geometry and the implication of intelligence in nature itself. I bet many of you have been awestruck by its symmetries, but this is what caused the debate as to whether math is real or just an illusion and an invention. And the pondering of that alone can become a spiritual meditation for some, or a shamanic journey. But the problem still remains because they can't answer their own question. It is too close to taboo subjects like gods and creators. The confusion, combined with the mystical awe and a few historical bigotries and belief systems, have led to creationism. Now let me be clear on this one. The prime number cross is not creationism as most people understand it. Those who have sought their creator's hand in the beautiful symmetries but haven't been able to grasp it have turned to their sacred books full of distortions and fanaticism and concluded that their God created everything a few thousand years ago, blah, 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 blah. The irony is that the prime number cross provides exactly what they've sought, but it kind of destroys their crazy religion in the process. Catch 22 for religiously indoctrinated mindsets. It confirms intelligence in this thing we call reality, though. I mean, think about it. All the complexity of nature, observable and measurable by mathematics, and all that this implies about the universe we live in. It's still an obscure notion to comprehend, though, because the question still hasn't been answered. Is mathematics real? Well, the numbers are. Look at them in their circles and you'll see the rhythm of the primes being generated by the plus-minus function, almost like a binary computer, to provide a structure in 3 dimensions, one which actually creates all of those other symmetries in geometries I've talked about tonight. A pattern which has always been there, hidden only because we didn't look at them using pi-based geometry, that of the ancients. A simple circle based upon the hermetic triple octave of Thoth, or Hermes. You have just unlocked nature and are staring at a pattern which no person can deny. It's just simply there to see in the very system of numbers with which we count. The symbols themselves don't matter. They just represent quantities of something in nature, whatever that something is. 2 is just one of those things, happening twice. Think of a number as grains of sand, where 6 is just 6 grains and 9 is 9 grains. Things. If the numbers had some tangible mass, they would be the building blocks of reality themselves. And so we arrive at the point where you may conceptualize numbers as some things. In fact, the prime number cross proves that they are, and I'll go more into that, and how it truly is not only a grand unified theory of physics, but one of reality too, because it provably lays at the base of the chemical elements, the structure of space, matter, energy, and time. And we will look at this another time, because there's been enough to get your head around on this one tonight. But consider this. If what I've just said is true, and we have on our hands a unified knowledge of the physics of reality, one which in graphic form alludes to probably the most ancient religious symbol known to man, the 8-ray cross, known also in occult philosophies, and which also unifies all the natural sciences into one number theory, provable at every level. And don't lose sight of the fact that Einstein believed once a grand unified theory was found, it will be based on numbers. What do you think the Holy Grail itself might really be? We hear of a variety of ancient knowledge, ancient secrets. One of those is referred to as the scientific secret. Well, maybe here you can see it for the first time. You see, if there had been a previous civilization on this planet with high spiritual and scientific knowledge, as all pointers realistically point towards nowadays, then what else could they have known if not the prime number cross, which would explain why it has inevitably surfaced again in our times. Did it ever truly go away? One last taster of what the prime number cross geometry actually redefines. Remember that energy equals mass times the square of the speed of light, according to Einstein, yeah? It means energy is matter. Well, it's not. The new, or should I say ancient, understanding tells us that energy is reciprocal time and that space is reciprocal matter. And believe it or not, this is what Einstein's famous equation also tells us, because the version we know is only an abbreviation for the common people, as it were. There is nothing in the full equation which doesn't verify what I've just said. I'll leave you to contemplate the enormity of that, and I will go into it at another time.
She would ask me, how are you doing? never listen if I said always something going on in the mirror to occupy her head. Sometimes the sun would shine like she does, casting shadows on the ground, reminding her of who she thinks she is. What comes must go around. What goes must come around. She could kick you where the sun don't shine. She could love you till it hurt. Never knew if she was right or wrong. Never knew which one came first. Never knew which one came first. So why do I heave a sigh tonight under the sky? I'm getting high tonight. Why do I feel so good tonight under a half moonlight and shooting at the stars? At the stars. She would ask me, how is it hanging? Couldn't see that I was scared. I had to tell her almost everything. Could never fill the empty bed, but the sun will keep on shining, rainbows on her wonder wall. I'm just a mug on a dusty shelf. I guess I can't win them all. I guess I can't win them all. She could kick you where the sun don't shine. She could love you till it hurts. Never knew if she was right or wrong. Never knew which one came first. Never knew which one came first. So why do I heave a sigh tonight under the sky? I'm getting high tonight. Why do I feel so Draw down the moon tonight and shoot it at the stars. At the stars. And the sun will keep on shining, casting shadows on the ground. It's feeding time for the gatherer. Oh, the honey they have found. What goes must come around. Drawing down the moon.
That one was called Drawing Down the Moon. One of mine, based upon the Wiccan ceremony called Drawing Down the Moon.
And it's good night from me, and it's good night from him.